Walk this earth like a god.
Thank you for joining me for part 2 of my look at the heavyweight contenders in 2019. Who will maneuver closer to the heavyweight championship or even possibly fight for it? One man who has designs of another title shot is Luis Ortiz, the Cuban southpaw who came close to beating Deontay Wilder in 2018. But ultimately he couldn't get the job done after having the WBC champion hurt in round 7 of their fight. Ortiz has publicly rued that missed opportunity, saying he realizes the mistakes that he made and he feels he deserves a rematch. Since that fight, Ortiz has beaten overmatched opponents Razvan Kajanu and Travis Kaufman, and he is handily placed in the WBC rankings. But with Wilder and Fury set to have their rematch, the Cuban will have to turn elsewhere. Talk of a fight with British prospect Joe Joyce, it's yet to materialise into anything concrete, but should it be held, it could likely be staged in the UK, where American boxing power broker Al Heyman has established a deal with broadcaster ITV. Depending on other dominoes to fall in the division, a possible fight that might occur in 2019 for Ortiz is one with Dominic Breazeale. But for that to occur, the Wilder-Fury rematch needs to happen, and the WBC #1 contender Dillian Whyte would have to face Anthony Joshua. Both are likely at this point. In that scenario, if the WBC orders Breazeale, its mandatory challenger, to have an interim title fight to take care of his mandatory status, the next name on the ranking that would be called is Ortiz. It's a bit complicated, but it's possible. But putting aside ifs, buts and maybes, Luis Ortiz is coming to the tail end of his career. He will be 40 at the end of March. He needs to be in the big and meaningful fights for the remainder of his time in the sport, 1 for his legacy and 2 for his bank balance. 2018 saw 2 stay-busy fights after the Wilder loss, but hopefully 2019 will see a better caliber of opponent for Ortiz as he looks to make another title run. The next guy inching his way closer to a title, almost literally, is unbeaten contender Jarrell Miller. Jarrell Big Baby Miller. This is an interesting case, given that he's a 300-plus pound behemoth of a man who can move, he brings pressure and volume, and he has an unusually good gas tank for a guy his size, and also given the volume of punches that he throws. But many fans still don't know what to make of the trash-talking Miller, given the closer that he's getting to a title shot, his level of opposition has leveled off and dropped off. On his come-up, the Brooklyn fighter took a good step up in Gerald Washington and then Mariusz Wach. It was followed again by another similar opponent in Johan Duhaupas, all 3 former title contenders but all considered to be on the slide to some degree, only to be followed more recently by lesser competition in the form of 41-year-old Thomas Adamek and lightly regarded prospect Bogdan Dinu. Fans have rightly questioned Miller's level of opposition, especially when he is at the same time accusing unified champion Anthony Joshua of ducking him, and Miller is demanding that fight. The question remains though, how good is Jarrell Miller? Will he, as a top 10 contender, which he is regarded as, face someone who is closer to his level in 2019? Or will he continue his pursuit of a secondary title in the WBA, which has ultimately led nowhere so far? There's a lot to like though about Jarrell Miller and the way he overwhelms his opponents with pressure and volume, but many fans will remain skeptical until he does something to win them over. The New Zealand contender Joseph Parker enters 2019 with no belt and 2 losses from 2018 on his record. While his bank balance may be healthier from the pay-per-view fights with Anthony Joshua and Dillian Whyte, his stock in the division is at the lowest it has been for some time. 2019 shapes as a bounce-back year. Parker's promoter Duco Events is seeking to fast-track his current rebuild and step into big fights immediately, including a rematch with Dillian Whyte. while there was some controversy with that July 2018 fight, given an accidental head clash led to a knockdown, White, along with the majority of fans, have moved on for the moment. So it's unclear which direction Parker and his team will go, with promoter David Higgins indicating all options of the US, UK and another fight back in New Zealand remaining on the table. Parker's name has been connected by fans to the likes of Alexander Usyk, Alexander Povetkin, Derek Chisora, Bryant Jennings, Lucas Brown and other more remote possibilities. But ultimately, where they go depends on money. Duco has always sought the best purses for Parker, and placing a premium on his services while his stock is down may stop some good fights from happening, and it makes it hard to predict what his 2019 could look like. But after seeing Parker blast out an overmatched Alexander Flores in December 2018, hopefully fans can expect a better opponent next time out. Ajit Kabayal will look to reassert himself in the division in 2019, after largely disappearing from sight in 2018, only having the one fight against a fringe contender. His lack of activity, it slowed his momentum that he'd built up after beating Derek Chisora in what remains his best performance to date. The German, who holds the EBU title, he's been ordered to face European Union champ and fellow contender Otto Wallen. It's unclear when that fight will be held, after initial reports had it happening in February. No date is scheduled yet. But the winner of that fight will be able to stake a claim as one of the rising contenders in the division, and help them position themselves for an eliminator, possibly in the IBF, where they are 3rd and 4th ranked respectively entering 2019. A guy who was dumped out of the IBF rankings heading into the new year was Derek Chisora, who was knocked out in brutal fashion by Dillian Whyte at the back end of 2018. Chisora showed enough in that fight and in his previous win over Carlos Takam to prove he's in the contender conversation and a handful on his day. Chisora is vowing to box on, and a rematch with Carlos Takam could be an option for him given how action-packed the first fight was. But 2019 could well be the last year Chisora boxes at a decent level. The next 4 names I've deliberately left until the back end of part 2, given they are all fighting in January 2019, and those fights will influence the what next. Bryant Jennings faces Oscar Rivas on January 18th, not long after this video is published. For Jennings, a win will solidify his place in the rankings, in particular the WBO, where he is very highly rated, and that sanctioning body represents, in my view, his best chance of getting a final eliminator. For Rivas, a win would erase the disappointment of recent years when he has been unable to pass the eye exam in the United States, which has led to contender-level fights falling through. The Jennings fight will be Rivas' first true step up, and it could be a very fun fight. If Jennings loses, he will face an uphill battle, and given how thin Top Rank's heavyweight stocks are, it's not immediately clear how he would plot his path back to contention. For Rivas, if he loses, he might be able to fall back to fighting other fighters within the PBC stable to try and rebound, but given Rivas is further down the rankings, his road back might take longer than Jennings. On January 26th, Adam Kanelski will look to retain his unbeaten streak when he faces former title contender Gerald Washington, who needs a win to remain relevant and in the contender conversation. Washington heads into the encounter with the height and reach advantages, but he has been prone to wilting under pressure before, like against Jarrell Miller, and he will get plenty of come-forward pressure from Kanelski. If Kanelski can defeat Washington, as many predict, he will continue rising the rankings and be in striking distance of a title shot, possibly 1 or 2 fights away. A loss, though, would leave him with a tricky rebuild, as he is a tricky opponent for a number of contenders. For Washington, a win is a must, otherwise he will be relegated to gatekeeper status. At 36, he needs the win to keep his title aspirations alive. And given I've mentioned Washington in this video, I should mention his PBC stablemate, Charles Martin, who showed in his lone fight of 2018 against Adam Kanelski that he still has something left in the tank. But to get back in the hunt for a title, Martin will need to fight more frequently in 2019 and, of course, win. And I'm going to end this video with two names that some consider are more than just prospects, and by the end of 2019 they could be regarded as contenders: Joe Joyce and Filip Hrgovic, both of whom have decent wins on their resumes when you consider how inexperienced that they are in the pro ranks. But making substantial progress towards a title shot in 2019, it will likely require overpaying bona fide contenders, and often this is easier said than done, with everyone plotting and manoeuvring their own course and path to a title shot very carefully. I hope you've enjoyed this two-part look at the contenders in 2019, and as always, drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.